Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Rewind that. It's your girl, Miss K. If this is your first time coming across my channel, welcome. Please subscribe if you like the vibe and hit that notification bell so you know when I upload more videos like this one. Alright guys, today we're going to be doing something a little different, something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, which is throwback reviews. Okay, so today we're going to be doing episode number 1 of Game of Thrones, which is the very first episode. It's the pilot called Winter is Coming. All right, so Game of Thrones is not the only show that I want to do throwback reviews on. There are other shows, but if you guys have any ideas of shows that you guys want me to do reviews on, please let me know, all right, in the comment section below. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I just want to say that I am going to try my best not to present any spoilers for some of the people that have not ever watched Game of Thrones, okay? So that might be a little hard, but I'm going to try my best like I said, all right? Another thing is, please forgive me if you're one of those super duper crazy Game of Thrones fans, especially the ones that have read the books, because I'm telling you, when you say the wrong thing about a character or you get something wrong, these people come at your neck. I am not here for that. We're here for fun, so let's have fun, all right? And here we go. So the episode starts off with 3 men of the Night's Watch, right? They're leaving the wall to go on a ranging mission beyond the wall. They get to an area where they split up, and one of them comes across a spooky scene where he finds these chopped up body parts in the snow. Of course, he's freaked out, so he runs back to his brothers of the Night's Watch, and he tells them what he found. One of them suggests that they go back, and the one in charge says, no, get back on your horse. We're going to check this thing out. So they go off to find the body parts again, but when they get to the scene, the body parts are now gone. So long story short, the men run into the creatures that did all the damage in the woods, right? In the show, these creatures are called White Walkers, and in the books, they're called the Others. So the White Walkers kills 2 of the Rangers and 1 gets away. Now, the one that gets away is the one that actually saw the body parts chopped up in the snow, okay? And he's running off, and instead of running back to the wall, he runs the opposite direction, okay? Making him a deserter, which is punishable by death. Next, we get to Winterfell, where we meet Lord Eddard Stark, aka Ned Stark, along with his wife and 6 children. 5 of the children are with his wife, Catelyn, and he has a bastard son named Jon Snow. All right, so Lord Stark gets word that they found a deserter from the wall, so this means he has to be the one to put the guy to death. So he takes his sons Robb, Jon, and Bran with him to witness this. Now, this is the first time Bran is going to be witnessing something like this, okay? So after the beheading, Lord Stark walks over to his young son Bran and asks him if he understands why he had to do what he did. Bran responds by saying, Jon said he was a deserter. So Lord Stark says, but do you understand why I had to kill him? So Bran says, our way is the old way. And Ned says, the man that passes the sentence must swing the sword. And I thought it was important to mention this moment because this teaching is something that Ned Stark's sons will not only remember, but they will have to eventually demonstrate. All right. Moving on, as Ned and the gang are on their way back, they come across a dead stag and a dead dire wolf. Many of us already know that this is pretty much a bad omen as it pertains to the Starks and House Baratheon, because the stag represents House Baratheon and the direwolf represents House Stark. And by represents, I mean it's their sigil, right? It's their house sigil. Okay, so we see the dead direwolf, and clinging to her body are 5 pups. So Lord Stark says that they should have a quick death because they won't survive without their mother. But Bran pleads with his father, but Ned just says, I'm sorry, Bran. But then Jon Snow speaks up and tells his father that there are 5 pups, 1 for each of the 5 Stark children, and the direwolf is the sigil of their house, so you're meant to have them. So Ned says, okay, you'll feed them and do everything for them yourselves, and if they die, you'll bury them yourselves too. So they take the 5 pups along with them, and just before they leave, Jon Snow finds 1 more pup, which was an all-white one, in which Theon says, that one's yours, Snow. Next, we get to King's Landing, where we meet Jaime and Cersei Lannister, twin brother and sister. So we see that Cersei is worried about something, right? A secret that she obviously doesn't want to get out. But the one person who could have told this secret is dead now, and that's Jon Arryn. But Jaime tells Cersei that if Jon Arryn told the king this secret, both their heads would be skewered on the city gates by now. So he basically wants Cersei to stop worrying, you know? So back at Winterfell, Catelyn Stark, which is Ned's wife, goes to the Godswood to tell Ned that Jon Arryn is dead. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jon Arryn was like a father to Ned Stark and to the King Robert Baratheon, okay? He fostered them both at the Vale, so when Robert Baratheon became king, Jon Arryn became his hand. So now Cat comes with this news that not only is Jon Arryn dead, but the king is coming to Winterfell with dang near everybody, okay? Everybody at court, right? The king, the queen, the prince, everybody. So Ned says, well, if he's coming all this way, there's only one thing he's after. And Cat says, you can always say no, Ned. Next, the Starks get themselves ready to receive the king and the rest of the royal family. Meanwhile, Bran sees the royal family approaching Winterfell because he climbed to the top of one of the towers. So, of course, when his mother sees him, she scolds him and says, how many times do I have to tell you no climbing? Then she says, promise me you won't do it again. And he promises. But of course, many of us already know that he is not going to keep that promise. And if he did keep that promise, there might not be much of a story to tell, now would it? So the king approaches Ned and his family, and they have their greetings or whatever, right? And then King Robert asks Ned to take him to the crypts where he could pay his respects to Ned's dead sister, Lyanna Stark, whom he was in love with and betrothed to years ago. Anyway, when they get to the crypts, they talk about what happened to Jon Arryn and how the fever took him so quickly. Then, the moment Ned knew was coming happens. King Robert tells Ned that he needs him in King's Landing because he needs someone there he can trust. Then he says to Ned, I would name you Hand of the King. And Ned says, you honor me, your grace, instead of saying no like most of us wish he should have done, right? Anyway, next we get to Pentos across the Narrow Sea, where we meet the last of the Targaryens, Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen. So we see here that Viserys prepares his sister Daenerys to be married off to a Dothraki Khal to serve as an ally. Okay, they need this ally in hopes to win back the Seven Kingdoms and the Iron Throne, the throne in which King Robert Baratheon now sits, okay? And Viserys is willing to sell his sister off like a whore. He is willing to do whatever needs to be done to raise that army. All right, next, the Starks hold a feast for the royal guests, and Jon Snow is outside whacking a pole. It's like a wooden pole with stuffed hay or something like that, right, with his sword. Because he's not welcome at the feast, since Lady Cat thought it would be insulting to the royal family if Jon was seen in their midst. So Uncle Benjen arrives and greets Jon. He tells Jon that bastards are welcome at the wall, and at the wall he won't get such treatment. So long story short, Jon says, take me back to the wall with you. I'm ready. But Uncle Benjen says, you don't know what you're asking for or what you'd be giving up. At the wall, you can't have a family, you can't get married, you're in it for life. But Jon says he doesn't care about that. And Uncle Benjen just tells him, look, the wall isn't going anywhere, so just chill, right? Then Jon has an encounter with Tyrion Lannister, who was kind of lurking about in the back somewhere, if you will. He approaches Jon, and Jon says, you're Tyrion Lannister, the queen's brother. Then Tyrion says, and you're Ned Stark's bastard. So Jon is immediately offended and walks away from Tyrion. Tyrion then apologizes for offending him. And from the looks of things, guys, it didn't seem like Tyrion meant to offend him, but it doesn't stop him from pressing the issue either. After apologizing to Jon, Tyrion says to him, you are the bastard, though. And Jon says, Lord Eddard is my father. And Tyrion says, and Lady Stark is not your mother, making you the bastard. And it came off very sarcastic and you could see why it would further offend Jon. But regardless of how rude or sarcastic it may have been delivered, Tyrion was simply trying to teach Jon a lesson and just owning up to what he is rather than who he is, you know. He said to Jon, let me give you some advice, bastard. Never forget what you are, 'cause the rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it could never be used to hurt you. So Jon was like, are you kidding me with this advice? What do you know about being a bastard, you know? And Tyrion turns and says to him, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. And with that, he left Jon and went on his merry way, okay? Next, we're inside the feast where we see many of the characters interacting, but one interaction that I'm going to mention is the brief exchange of words between Ned Stark and Jaime Lannister. Through this exchange, we get a hint that these two men don't care for each other at all. But Jaime, he's a bit smug about things. And of course, he has to stop Ned, who just wants to pass by, right? Jaime has to stop Ned and say a few words. But Ned just wants to keep it moving, like I said. He got an attitude kind of like me, like if I don't like you, there's no point in wasting time talking to you and being fake, okay? Anyway, Jaime says, I hear we're going to be neighbors soon. I hope it's true. He then says to Ned that if he accepts the king's offer, he's sure they will have a tournament in his name for taking the new position. He tells Ned that the competition has been stale and it would be good to have Ned on the field. So Ned says nice and calmly, I don't fight in tournaments. And Jaime, as smug as he wants to be, says, no, getting a little old. And Ned says, I don't fight in tournaments because when I fight a man for real, I don't want him to know what I can do. And so this day, guys, I love this response, okay? But that's just a glimpse of what's to come between Ned and Jaime, all right? So moving on. Next, Kat and Ned talk about the offer King Robert made him, and Kat says she doesn't want Ned to go. And Ned says that he's a northerner and his place is in the north with his wife. Then there's a knock on the door and it's Maester Luwin, who has a message from a rider in the night. The message is from Kat's sister, Lysa Arryn, who was married to Jon Arryn. Anyway, Kat reads the letter and burns it. She tells Ned that Lysa reports that Jon Arryn was murdered and she has fled the capital. So Maester Luwin says to Ned, if this letter is true, then that means the Lannisters conspire against the crown, and who but you can protect the king? So Kat is like, no, they murdered the last hand, and now you want Ned to take the job? So Maester Luwin points out that King Robert rode for a month to ask for Lord Stark's help. He's the only one he trusts. So while Kat and Maester Luwin are going back and forth, Ned is standing there with his mind just racing, right? You can tell he's really thinking hard. And of course, he's listening to what Kat and Maester Luwin are saying. Maester Luwin tells him that he swore the king an oath, while Kat says he spent half his life fighting Robert's wars. He doesn't owe him anything else, right? But ultimately, the decision is up to Ned. And many of us already know that once there's an oath involved, Ned is going to keep it, okay? So this is a life-changing decision. And the scene is also very significant because it's life-changing for everyone, right? But the interesting thing about this scene for me was that it was sort of like Ned had an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the next. But you couldn't really say that either of them was a demon because they weren't saying things that were like evil. They both had valid points. Maester Luwin had a good point and so did Kat. But it was still interesting to see. All right. Next, we get to the wedding of Daenerys and Khal Drogo, and Dany gets a little taste of what her brother signed her up for by having her marry into the Dothraki. We see Daenerys looking around and there's this disgusting looking food. It looks like horse hearts cooking on a fire. And then we see what looks like some sort of rodents being cooked up and there's a bunch of flies swarming around them. So Dany sees why the Dothraki are considered savages, right? Anyway, the most significant part of this scene is when Dany receives a wedding gift of 3 dragon's eggs from Magister Illyrio. He tells Dany that the ages have turned them into stone, but they will always be beautiful. We also see Dany receive a white horse from Khal Drogo as a wedding gift right before he takes her virginity by force, okay? Next, Ned Stark and King Robert go hunting with a large party of folks. So Winterfell is kind of quiet, it's not as full now because so many people are gone. So while his father and others are off hunting, Bran does what he does, and that's climb the castle walls. While he's climbing, he approaches a window and he hears moaning. So as Bran gets closer, he eventually comes to a window where he sees freaking Jaime Lannister and Cersei having sex, okay? Ugh. When I first ever saw this, guys, I was so disgusted, of course, and I'm pretty sure you guys were as well, all right? But anyway, Cersei looks up and sees Bran just watching them. And that's one thing I've never understood. Why did Bran stay there so long? He could have just saw what he saw and got out of there before anybody saw him watching, right? But he just kept staring, kept watching, all right? So now Cersei is in a panic and she says to her brother, stop. So Jaime stops and Even then, Bran had time to get away, but he stayed in place. So Jaime goes over to him, grabs him up, and asks Bran if he's completely mad. But all Cersei kept saying was, he saw us, he saw us. So unfortunately, guys, Jaime does the only thing he thinks he can do at this point, right? He looks at Cersei and says, the things I do for love, and shoves Bran from the tower. And guys, this was the part that got me hooked on this show. Because I'm going to be honest, I wasn't sure what I was watching at first. This was years ago, but I wasn't sure what I was watching. But I did understand that it was only the first episode, and some shows take a little time to pick up. But Bran being pushed from that tower is what hooked me. All right, guys, so that was the episode, and that is it for today's throwback review. I tried to condense it as much as possible, and as the season goes along, of course, it's going to get more interesting. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me, and let me know if you have any suggestions for a throwback review. In the meantime, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when I upload more videos like this one. Until next time, take care and be blessed. Bye-bye.